This is Mike Massey from Small Dojo Big Profits, and what I want you to do is I want you to stop everything, go grab a drink if you need to, because what you're about to learn in the next 10 minutes could possibly change your life forever. Now, who am I? Once again, I'm Mike Massey. I'm the author of Small Dojo Big Profits, and I'm about to tell you how I started my school, my first martial arts school, or I should say my first successful martial arts school, back when I was dead broke. I had 0 credit, no students, and honestly, practically not a dime to my name. So how did I do it? Well, the first thing is I decided that being broke sucks. And of course, you don't need me to tell you that. But back before I started my first successful dojo, that's pretty much all I knew. I'd been working mostly minimum wage jobs. I was fairly uneducated, although I was self-educated. I didn't have that important piece of paper that is proof of education that most employers for good jobs want to see. And so I bounced around from job to job and place to place, and never made very much money. Had a lot of fun. I partied a lot and chased a lot of women and all the stuff that young men do before they decide that they have to get serious about life and do something and accomplish something with their life. So what I decided was that I wanted to start a martial arts school and teach martial arts professionally, but unfortunately I failed 3 times before I figured it out. Now, before I started my first successful school, not only did I fail 3 times, but I failed 3 times miserably. In fact, before I moved to the town that I live in now, I'd actually failed twice. Now, I thought it was the location, but it was actually more than that. The first time I decided to open up a studio, I'd partnered with a friend of mine, and he was a black belt, and I wasn't quite a black belt yet. I was almost a black belt. And I ended up doing about 75% of the teaching for 25% of the money, which was fine for my friend, but he got all the credit and all the money, and I got all the work, so that didn't work out too well. And then I decided to start my own studio. So I got promoted to black belt and went to another town and rented a place from somebody and spent about 2 weeks fixing that place up. And then guess what? I let people talk me out of opening that studio when it actually could have been a success because there was nothing else happening in that town. Now, the thing is, back then all I wanted to do was teach martial arts, but people kept telling me that I was crazy. Go to college, they said. Get a good job, they said. And I listened to them. You know, that hearing that over and over again from everybody I talked to, it kind of stuck in my head after a while. And it was hard for me to go beyond that doubt and get past that doubt so I could get out of my personal misery. And that doubt was a lot of what kept holding me back. Now, the thing is, no one really believed in me. As a matter of fact, I actually heard this from a friend of mine. After my former buddy of mine had told me she talked to my ex-girlfriend. He had talked to my ex-girlfriend, I should say, and told her what I was doing, trying to start a martial arts studio, and she laughed at me, and she said, you know, I was an idiot, because everybody knows you can't make any money doing that. And she was completely wrong, as I proved everyone was completely wrong in the years after that. But the thing was, in that time, I wasn't going to give up. I was determined to succeed. So I moved to another town, and I drove my old beat-up car. The brakes were shot on it. Tires were shot. I mean, the thing was on its last leg. Had just about $50 in my pocket at that time. And got to Austin, Texas, and within a few months, I'd started my first class. Now, I found a location to teach at, and this was actually in a gymnasium of a local elementary school. And I put an ad in the paper, and guess what? The first day, the class was packed, and I was just ecstatic. You know, I filled up all my classes the first day, and I thought, man, I've made it. Here's the problem, though. By the 3rd month, I had lost 2/3 of my students. And a few months later, I finally had to take a better job in order to pay my bills, and I ended up shutting that class down. So, failure number 3. Boom. Still, I refused to give up. So I found a new location in a different town. Now, here's the thing. I got smart this time, and I chose a much better location. So that was part of it. But also I got smarter about how I was teaching, so I could keep more students around. And then plus, I had a much better business plan. Now, I still kept teaching the same old hardcore martial arts I'd always taught. And, you know, the thing is, I'm like a lot of you guys out there that are listening to this. I really despise those, what people call McDojos. Those places where people show up and they pay money and they get belts regardless of their performance or what have you. As long as they're paying tuition, they get promoted in rank. And I think that's just worthless. So the thing is, I still kept teaching a quality martial arts program, but I did it with an entirely different outlook on business. Now, my new attitude was all about building my classes up enough so I was making enough money to get my own dojo. That was my goal. Now, within a few months at the part-time location I'd found, I'd filled my classes with about 40 paying students. But then, oddly enough, after I was making the rec center a ton of money, paying them a cut of what I was making, they decided that they were going to take the classroom I was teaching in and turn it into a fitness room. And so they took my class slots away, and I was going to be cut back to teaching a few nights a week, 3 nights a week, to only teaching 1 day a week on a Saturday. And I knew that would kill my program, and I'd be back right where I started once again, back to square one. So thankfully I was making just enough money to move into a better location. Not a full-time location, but at least I had the money at that time, the cash flow, in order to be able to find a place that I could rent part-time. So I approached a local gym owner at the gym where I worked out at. He had an unused room off to the side of his facility that he was paying rent on. He wasn't doing anything with. It was about 600 square feet. And the ceiling tiles were falling down. The light fixtures were broken. There were huge holes in the drywall. The carpet was trash. There was trash all over the place. I mean, basically, when they finished out his space, the people that were finishing it out just put all the trash in that room instead of hauling it off. So I spent my own money and my own time, and actually got the parent of one of my students who was a painter to come in, and he helped me with some drywall work and some other things. And we spent about a week, more or less, getting that place ready to open. And I got even more students. And then boom, disaster strikes again. About 2 months later, the gym owner went bankrupt, and he sold the place to one of his employees. And guess what? The new owner, who was actually a friend of mine, or so I thought, she gave me about 30 days to pack up my things and leave, because she decided she was going to take the room that I invested all my time and my hard-earned money into to fix up. And now that I'd newly renovated it, she was going to turn that into a daycare for the gym. So once again, I was devastated, but undaunted. I was sick by this time of living at the mercy of other people who could just honestly care less about me. And that's kind of one of those hard truths in life that you have to learn when you go into business. And that is, nobody else is going to look out for you. You got to look out for yourself. So I decided to get tough mentally. And I decided I wasn't going to give up. So I started looking for a place of my own to rent. Now the thing is, I knew I couldn't really afford to rent a space by myself just yet. So I had to get smart. I had to get crafty. And so I had to figure out a way where I could afford a place, but on my current budget, which wasn't really to the point where I could afford a full-time space. So what I decided was I needed to cut out all those niceties that maybe other studio owners had in their places, but that I couldn't afford just yet. So I went down a list and I decided what I absolutely had to have in a location, and I eliminated all those things that I didn't need so I could find a place that would suit my needs, but yet that I could afford. Now, after going through that process, that allowed me to get a place that I could afford, and thankfully it was big enough for my needs, and it was actually in a decent location besides. Now, I moved into that place with about 50 students, and by about a year later, more or less, I was trucking along with over 150 students. I mean, I was killing it, basically. Now, finally, I was living my dream of being a full-time martial arts school owner. Now, granted, I had some further setbacks, like sleeping in my dojo office for a month after my roommate skipped out on the rent. That left me in a bind, and I decided I'd rather pay the rent of my dojo than I would in my apartment. So I slept in the dojo office for a month and took showers at the gym. It's kind of payback for when they kicked me out. But you know what? I really, honestly didn't care. I mean, I went through a lot of rough times. Getting that school up and running to where it was really, really, really successful. I really didn't care about those hard times. And here's why. It's because for once in my life, I was calling my own shots. I wasn't having to go in and answer to somebody else at some crappy, minimum wage job, although I did keep working full-time jobs in order to support myself so I could reinvest my money back into my studio. But I didn't have to do that. I mean, if I wanted to, I could have quit those jobs and just lived off the money I was making from my studio. So that was my own choice. I could make my own decisions in my life for once and not have to live at the mercy of my wallet and somebody else using me, basically for indentured servitude. And I was happy. It might have been tough, but I was happy. Now, here's something I found out while I was going through all those rough times, and that is that anyone in any situation can be successful in business, but you got to have a plan. You got to have a good plan in order to be a success. Now, I've laid out the entire plan I followed in Small Dojo Big Profits, and I've completely updated and revised it with all the stuff I've learned since then. Now, if you want to discover how to start and run your own successful martial arts school or MMA gym, even if you're dead broke, even if you have zero credit like I had, and no students to speak of, my question to you is, what are you waiting for? I've laid it all out for you. I've made it absolutely crystal clear. And this book has been used by hundreds of other martial arts instructors since I published it to start successful schools. Now, the thing is, this is the real deal, and there's absolutely no risk to you when you order today. It's because I'm so confident that you'll be absolutely satisfied with your purchase of Small Dojo Big Profits based on the feedback I've gotten over the last 10 years from the thousands of people who have purchased this book. I'm offering you a 60-day, no questions asked, 100% money-back guarantee on your purchase. So, click the order button right now and find out how you can build a school of your dreams on a pork and beans budget like I did. And let me tell you something. I ate a lot of top ramen and pork and beans. Thankfully, I don't have to do that anymore. So, click the order button right now and get started today building the school of your dreams. And I'll see you on the other side.